Hey guys, welcome back to our Q&A with the side of thing series, whatever we're calling this. It was previously Q&A with the side of Minecraft. Not necessarily saying that Minecraft is gone forever necessarily, but the original idea of this is that I would answer questions while playing a game, and the goal would be to be one of the games that I generally find kind of like zen and mindless a bit. Minecraft didn't quite work out because while it was my zen game back in the day where I would just burn through hundreds of podcasts while playing that game, and then even like listen to documentaries and stuff like that for hours and hours on end, as the years passed, the game has greatly changed. So I found myself having no idea what was going on with certain mechanics, and things got distracting and confusing. So my next thing I'm going to try is Samurai Warriors. And that's because Dynasty Warriors, Samurai Warriors, I've probably played more than 10 different entries and spin-offs of this franchise at this point. Some of them to completion, alarmingly. Haven't really had time for that since I started doing Let's Plays, or having jobs and stuff, but back in high school, man, it was easy to find that time. This is Samurai Warriors 4. I have not played any games more recent than Samurai Warriors 4, but up until that time, out of all the ones I've played so far, I would probably say that Samurai Warriors 4 is quite possibly the best game they've made in the series, partly because of the way they integrated co-op slash single player, where if you play single player you can actually essentially play co-op with yourself by having a second character that you give orders to and then switch places, and you can switch between controlling the two of them on the fly, but when they're not controlling them they can go and they can go head towards objectives and you can tell them where to head while you're doing stuff on your own. Like, it's like, there's some cool stuff going on in here. There's also a pretty extensive single-player campaign thing. I think I've cleared like half of the campaigns or something. I haven't touched this for a while, but we're not going to be doing that because that's too Let's Play-y. It has story and stuff like that, and that'll be distracting. So instead, we're going to go into Chronicle mode, which I believe is like their equivalent of like Empire and stuff like that. So I'll just be sort of plugging away at this in the background. I prefer this. Not everyone agrees with this idea, but for me, I'm like, I don't like the idea of doing a vlog series, because it's just me sitting in front of a webcam, and I'm not very animated. I don't have a hand cam, so I can't like walk around and stuff like that, really. And I don't know where I'd walk anyway. It's freaking hot outside, frankly. And otherwise, it's just, if I use my webcam, it's just me sitting at a computer, and I'm not one of those really animated manic type people, so it's mostly just my face just sitting there with my mouth opening and closing a lot, and that's where the words come from. So, and I'm just used to at this point I've just grown used to the habit of talking while playing video games after all these years, so just doing a Let's Play series where I talk about the questions instead of the game is totally natural for me, especially since I started with sad games, which wasn't even the way that I do stuff here where I'm focused on the game all the time. Like, I used to never be focused on the game with my commentary, and we still often aren't during that stuff. Let's get started. Yes, we will delete our previous character. We'll stick with normal just because it's supposed to be kind of mindless. There's Hojo Jojo, a previously created Nightmare character that made a certain appearance before. Dare I just choose him again? Why not? What could go wrong? Alright, we're gonna select a starting region for Hojo Jojo. And you recognize a lot of these names from when we played Neo recently, because it's the same region, and the same era, actually. There's those two Tokugawa regions and a bunch of other ones. I kinda like the idea of just starting on one side of the continent, so let's go all the way down to Kyushu. Tachibana Muneshige, of course. Basically, he's like, you're really cool. Ah, you're awesome. I can't wait for awesome things to happen. This isn't what we're here for, so I'm gonna go ahead and just go forward with it. The important thing is I'm gonna go fight things. This is not an ideal mission. This is me screwing around. Alright, let's start a mission. Defeat them in order to preserve the peace of the land. Mission starting. Alright, so our first question is from Ryan Gear. He asks, are you enjoying your time doing the D&D with your friends? If so, can we expect it to be a regular thing? As I am totally in love with it. Keep up with the fantastic work, man, and try to keep yourself first and us second. That comes up a lot. A lot of the comments are like concerned about me specifically, which is interesting. I am like, it's my job. It's not insane to put hours in at your job, and I don't put necessarily an extreme amount of hours at my job at this point. That's one of the reasons why I switched to the, like the 6 videos per day, is so that I can control that kind of general concept, so I wouldn't have to worry so much about overworking myself. Like, that's the new goal. And that's actually thanks to you guys, because you guys support me on Patreon, which allows me to actually, I now have the ability to not have to always, focus on new releases and make every video the moment the new release comes out and be terrified about that kind of stuff. Because that's not as much of an issue as it used to be, because my Patreon has grown so much that I'm not completely dependent on ad revenue in order to do my job, in order to make a living off of this, which I am somehow doing, which still baffles me, but cool. So that's... I put the work in, but I am taking steps to making it reasonable. That's why we do 6 videos a day now. We'll get to more that stuff later, because a lot of questions related to that. As far as the D&D goes, yeah, I'm having a good time with that. A lot of it depends on Wander, I think. I think we're all currently enjoying it, and I'm up for sticking around with it, and it's not necessarily a huge draw, but I have a good time with it. And hopefully I'll gain more experience with it, because I've never had very long D&D experiences. I played D&D back in college for like the first time, more or less. Or more specifically, I tried to play, I played D&D for a little bit when I was in high school, like once. I made a monk character, but then my friend took us to this place and he was the DM, and we were playing with strangers in the back room of a game shop, and it turned out that they had no idea. They were a terrible DM, and I didn't know that at the time. So they didn't know how to deal with the fact that the players weren't just doing exactly what they wanted them to do. And so after one session, that completely fell apart. I had a D&D group in college, though, that was significantly better because the DM knew more about what they were doing, because there was somebody who does it all the time. But the players themselves weren't always great. So while the campaign was often relatively well put together, or at least sourced from one of those pre-built campaigns and being innovated from there on the fly, the players were terrible role players, generally. I don't pretend to be a fantastic role player just in general, honestly. I'm not going to claim that, because I know that I have a lot of faults, and in particular, I'm really bad at figuring out how to talk in character. It's a weird contradiction. Like, I've gotten used to the general idea of, like, talking in third person. Not third person, but talking while doing Let's Plays and, like, just talking to an audience. Like, for some reason, I've gotten used to that part without having to constantly worry about, like, stage fright concepts or whatever. But for some reason, the moment I have the additional layer of talking through a second character's perspective that I've invented, it gets a lot harder to figure out how to formulate sentences and figure out how to do things. What I probably need to do is, I probably need to get distance from my actual self in my character and not worry about how the character reflects on me or anything like that is probably a step I need to make, and try to, instead of making my character overly complex or real, I wonder if I should try to find like an archetype, essentially. The same way that like the characters in a horror movie work out, or most genre fiction that is generally just kind of dumber characters across the board. That might be the smart thing to do, because there's a very real thing where there's just like, I need a simple rule set to fall on when I'm role-playing, so I can get used to the general field, and then I can probably try to advance from there. But that's just talking about my general growth, and that's not even what the question's about, but that, if you had me seen me answer questions before, you know how much I deviate anyway, and I'm just gonna cover old tangents here, apparently. That's what I do. Also forgotten how to activate the orb stuff in the corner, but that's fine. That's fine. It's not that important. Generally, I'm enjoying it, but because of my lack of experience and my ability to come up with stuff on the fly, I don't know if I could DM anytime soon. I don't know if I can handle that right now. So it really depends on how much Wander can keep coming up with campaigns, because I don't have much confidence in my ability to deal with that kind of stuff, and Bird definitely does not have the time. Wander and I are both full-time YouTubers, but Bird has a job at Amazon that takes up all of his time, and then also, I believe, still does like indie dev stuff on the side. So while he finds some time to screw around and do Let's Plays and stuff like that from time to time. That's not necessarily his primary goal, and so it takes a backseat constantly. So while I was surprised he was able to come up with I was surprised that he was able to actually, I think he made like backing music recently for our D&D campaign, which is impressive that he had time for that. But overall, I wouldn't really expect him to DM either. So that's probably the primary deciding factor about whether or not we can keep the campaign going forever, or after this campaign specifically, is whether or not Wander can always find the time to make up new campaigns over and over again. Is probably the primary thing that's going to need to happen. I'm up for it, probably indefinitely. Though one issue is that it is time consuming. We take up about 3 hours a week to do D&D, so it eats away at other opportunities. I was getting to a point where I was just, because of the 6 videos a day schedule, I was just getting to the point where I could reasonably, I could finally reasonably get ready to start editing Dark Souls 3 again. And then just in time for that, we started doing the D&D campaign, and I was like, oh god, damn it. Like, it was one more thing to add to the list of tasks to take care of, which is, the thing itself is fine and I enjoy it, but there's definitely a certain moment of like, ah, damn it, I had other plans for my time, and so I gotta work around that. Right now, the current threshold we have to worry about is that we've set up the podcast and our D&D campaign, and we've scheduled them both for weekends. So the D&D is recorded on Saturdays, and our podcast is recorded on Sundays. And while Bird and Wander both moved away from home and are generally just living with their fiancés and/or wives or girlfriends or whatever, but are otherwise completely changed into a completely new location that nobody else is in from their family and friends. Like, they're rather unattached as far as plans go. But I live near where I grew up. I've only moved about an hour away from where my child. I almost said born, but that's not true. But I've only moved about an hour away from my childhood home, and that means that like every time there's a birthday, or a Father's Day, or a family holiday, or virtually anything, like, there's much more obligation for me to actually show up for those kinds of things, and there's also just friends make plans, and we go to escape rooms and stuff like that. So it's been interesting seeing how a relatively minor time ask of, oh yeah, we'll just do D&D once a week, has led to weird complications of schedule where I'm like, ah, well this week this is in the way, and that week that's in the way, so we'll reschedule. Maybe if we record we recently recorded half of a D&D campaign on a Wednesday, while also recording the E3 podcast the same day, and like things have gotten really weird and complicated really fast. But as long as we can keep playing fast and loose and improvising with our time, then the D&D campaign will continue. It's just let's just maybe see. We'll see whether or not we can always make it happen on schedule. Right now, podcasts are supposed to be recorded on Sundays and probably uploaded Monday or probably on Tuesday, whereas our D&D campaigns are supposed to be uploaded on Sundays. I guess the podcast would be recorded on Sunday, uploaded on Monday or Tuesday. D&D is recorded on Saturday, and it's supposed to be uploaded half of it on Sundays and half of it on Wednesdays, and so that'll happen whenever that works out, basically. We'll see. The whole thing's... it's fun, and it's a mess, and we'll see how it turns out. But I'm up for it. That was way too long of an answer. But but you've learned a lot of things. Way more than anyone wanted to know. Jordan Murcott asks, as a YouTuber who works primarily from his desk most of the day, how do you keep yourself healthy? Yeah, that's definitely a reoccurring... A lot of people ask about how I'm doing, which is interesting. I don't, is more or less the short answer. I'm taking more and more steps to... Except for the part where I'm not actually taking more steps, in that I'm not walking, really. 'Cause it's hot. I'm generally creating more and more rules about what I can eat. I had a bad tendency to, because we live so close to convenience places, I would be tempted to go to like a Walgreens or something and grab like a pint of ice cream or something if I was like stressed or if it was a long day or something like that. And that's like, because I'm not like mapping it on a calendar anywhere, I'm not super aware of how often I'm doing that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to just not do that, by the way, anymore. I've cut out all sorts of sodas and energy drinks and so on from my diet just in general. I only really have like a soda if I'm at a restaurant and sitting down with people, and then I'm like that's often what I'll order, because mostly because I'm like the one person that apparently doesn't drink. So instead of drinking, I'll get a soda and stuff like that. I'm trying to keep away from ice cream. For caffeine, I only get my caffeine from coffee at this point, and I don't add things to my coffee. Coffee source is probably not completely ideal because it's Keurig cups and stuff like that, so I don't know at times what amount of additional calories may be inserted into some of that stuff. I generally just go to I try to get a light roast coffee with no special characteristics as much as I can in the attempt to just get regular-ass coffee. And I generally don't really have desserts and so on and so forth, but I'm not really doing much for eating specifically healthy, aside from just avoiding explicitly unhealthy things. And I don't really do a lot of exercising as much as I would like to, although I'm trying, one of the goals, among other things, of going towards the whole 6 videos a day is that I'm trying to go closer to the idea of eating, since I don't have great plans for my diet, I want to at least try to get exercise again. But there's a few barriers in the way of that, one of which is just yes, I'm busy oftentimes, but also just the weather is garbage. It's so garbage. Here in Central California, in the Sacramento region, like, it's just over 100 degrees, like, all the time. It's miserable. And, like, going out in there, like, I've made the mistake a few times of trying to go out in that weather and try to go for a walk. And, like, even just a walk, not even a jog or anything. And, like, I make it a few blocks, and I'm just miserable feeling. And it's not that, like, it's not exhaustion and exertion, because I mean, obviously I know what that feels like. Everyone knows what those things feel like. It's just like a general, like, no, you shouldn't be outside right now, feeling like this is generally bad. So I might have to develop really awkward schedules where during the summer and large chunks of the year I need to try to figure out times at nighttime, potentially, to be out and about. Which I'm not psyched about the idea of, because obviously people generally just feel less safe at night, which I don't think is a crazy conclusion to draw. So I'm not super in a hurry for that idea, but I really generally hate everything about the concept of a gym, and I don't really want to deal with that in my future. So I'm gonna have to try to figure out a walking schedule, and man, I just wish I lived somewhere else, though. One of my many goals, as my YouTube channel and Patreon and stuff grow, is that when it gets to a nice stable level, I definitely want to move anywhere else, even just back home where I'm from, which isn't even far away, but it was just I used to live in areas around where there was lots of hills and stuff like that, and that's not true in the Sacramento area. So, like, there was lots of, like, drafts and cloud coverage at time, and I was marginally closer to the coastline, which meant more regulated temperatures. I just don't remember summer being miserable the way that it has been ever since I started going to college and then eventually working in the Sacramento area and living around here like I am now. Like, it's just, all of summer is just miserable and hot in a way that I don't want to deal with anymore. So whenever I can afford to, I'd probably like to move away, ideally, because this sucks. But until then, yeah, I have to figure out other avenues towards fitness because of how just awful my options are right now. By the way, this is probably how meandering every answer gets, if you haven't seen the previous videos. I've noticed that, especially when I make those vlog videos where I try to update the channel, I'm like, here's a context about how things are going on the channel. I always end up screwing up and, I'll be like, this is like a 3-minute update, I'll get this information out instantly, and then I find myself trying to elaborate on, like, every little thing, and before long it's like a 20-minute video update, and then half the message is lost along the way anyway. So, welcome to my solo podcast where I answer questions in a very meandering fashion. But yeah, at the end of the day, I don't really have great advice for how to stay fit while working a desk all day. If you're looking for specifically advice, I don't know if the question was looking for advice for themselves or just worrying about me. But I don't have much to offer. I don't know special dietary tricks, and I've never been heavy into working out. I used to run a lot back in school, and so one of my things I'm hoping for is to get to a point where I can run consistently again. But that requires both discipline and environment to work out for me, and I don't know whether or not I have the other one, or the first one ready, but the second one is not great. And this is, of course, where everyone in the comments has their personal dick measuring contest, where they talk about how bad the weather is in their territory, and I live in North Dakota where you freeze if you step outside, and you're lucky, you California man, and stuff like that. Yeah. I have an international audience, and everyone loves to tell me about how much worse or better their country is whenever it's convenient to them. So your comment's already playing in my head in real time before you make it. It's fine. You don't need to do that part. In case I haven't mentioned it already, because I'll probably edit to the beginning of the video too. But these are questions asked by my Patreon supporters. We've already had the Minecraft episodes of this, and the questions are open to the public. You can submit your questions, and I'll get around to them sooner or later, hopefully. You can send those to Keith Ballard questions at I went to the 4nerds thing. That's the wrong Gmail. Keith Ballard questions at gmail.com. It should be listed in the description, I'm sure. I'll be taking questions at that email address. Please try to send them to the email address rather than comment sections, because it's a whole lot harder to keep track of comments in the long term than questions, because I basically have two ways I can view, I have like two ways that I can view comments, basically. One of them is that I can view the comments dashboard on YouTube, and the comments dashboard on YouTube is problematic because it unfortunately lists every single comment you ever get in chronological order, which is pretty much garbage, because it's across all of your videos on your entire channel in chronological order. It's like your notifications on Facebook. Like, it's just too much once you have any sort of volume, and so that stuff doesn't work out. The other way I can view comments is to look at the comments of every video individually by looking them up one video at a time. And the moment we have more than one video that people could be asking questions on, that's just too many locations, and it gets too messy too fast. So that doesn't really work out. Instead, you want to send your questions to the email, because that's one singular inbox for this exact purpose, and it significantly increases the chance that I'm actually going to know where your comments are and where to find them and stuff like that, and keep track of my backlog of questions correctly. Otherwise, things get messy quickly, and there's a very good chance of me missing your comment. I am not promising to answer every single question that's ever sent my way. Some can be inappropriate, some can be redundant, because a lot of people will ask the same thing that's already been answered recently. And while questions do change for... While answers do change for questions at times, I can't really necessarily say that they'll change often enough for me to answer a question every single time the same question pops up at times. Because, for example, one of the first questions that people will inevitably ask somebody who's making videos about games, the most obvious question to come up with is, what's your favorite video game? And stuff like that. And there's a certain repetition to the answers and questions they'll try to avoid. And there's also there'll be questions inevitably, because it's the internet, that I will just kind of opt not to answer in general, and that's fine. What's the next question? We have a two-parter next, and I'm going to mess up this name because it's not from my native tongue, so good luck. I'm gonna say Piotr Siupa, something like that. I've always wondered two things. Do you ever pretend to enjoy a game? Oh, by the way, minor side thing. I've talked about horses in various video games. I'm just gonna get sidetracked for a second here, because this is actually a tangent I'm curious about, want to mention real quick. I talk about horses in various video games and why I don't use them, because the moment you get off the horse, you have to go track it down, and it's really irritating. This is the example I always give when I talk about a horse that I quite like, is I always talk about the horse that's in Samurai Warriors 4 and other recent Dynasty Warriors games that fall into the same category. I get off the horse, and I run away, and it has the whistle button, just like every game ever. Look, I press the whistle button, it runs to me, isn't that great? But then, if I hold the whistle button, I'll automatically mount it. Look at that. I mounted it while running. How awesome is that? I didn't even have to pay attention to where the horse's location was. It just arrived at me, and then I was on a horse. That's the best thing ever. If your game treats horses like that, I will get on horses. But other games often make the speed boost of a horse not worth the hassle of using said horse, so I'm often disinclined to use said horse. Anyway, back to the question. He's always wondered two things with the first one. Did you ever pretend to enjoy a game in order to make a Let's Play series better to watch? I mean, some games that you really don't like. You played so many games, there has to be at least a single bad one. Somebody has been missing some playthroughs. No, I don't pretend to like games at all. In fact, some people take great umbrage with me expressing my criticisms of certain games. In fact, right now, the current game, there's almost always one, I think. I feel like I'm almost always playing one game in particular that gets the heaviest, that gets relatively heavy criticism, and it just sort of happens that way. Right now, it's Mass Effect Andromeda, and some people have even gone as far as to say that I jumped on a bandwagon and just decided to hate the game, which is a really bizarre thought process. Like, as if I'm some sort of, like, it's not like I'm like some sort of person who writes negative reviews with low scores for the specific purpose of getting people to go to my site to get mad at me. I'm literally like, it's not that there's no clickbait. There's no profit here for me to not liking a thing. There's no clickbait being like, Mass Effect Andromeda is the worst video game ever, to draw people into my channel. I don't profit off of a negative opinion at all. I just state my opinion because it's the honest one. There's no profit from it. It's like, it's not, I don't know why people come up with ulterior motives for this stuff. And also, it's extra baffling because I loved the Mass Effect trilogy by and large, and I specifically made a point to play the entire Mass Effect trilogy with hour-plus long episodes, sometimes 2-hour episodes, so I could blitz the entire thing again and go down memory lane, all prepping for Mass Effect Andromeda because I was so invested with the idea of going back to Mass Effect and going into this next game with the full context of having the previous games on my channel already, as opposed to not being there, and stuff like that. So, like, everything points towards me wanting to, like, almost make excuses for Mass Effect and like it above all else would have been the way to go, presumably. I may have just screwed up this mission, I'm not sure. Nope, we're good. But despite everything, I have been actively disliking the game. And there's been a relatively huge number of problems with it, and I've been expressing them all, and I've been explaining a lot of my grievances with them. Also, before anyone criticizes, yes, I am barely paying attention to what's going on in this, because that's kind of the point. I forgot about how many little metagame mechanisms there are in this game that kind of distract from the just button mashing and moving forward thing. Might do a different game next time. I have a few other ideas. We'll see how it goes. This is my pilot thing of bringing the series back, and every game's a little bit more distracting than I expect them to be. Turns out video games try to be games that you play. So right now, Mass Effect Andromeda I'm super not happy with, and some people like to argue with me, and it's been interesting. There's lots of other examples. The biggest example ever of a game that I just detested was probably, oh my god, am I forgetting its name? Am I finally losing its name? No, Anima Gate of Memories. Nope, unfortunately it's still in there. It's still in my brain somewhere. Damn it. Yeah, Anima Gate of Memories is a game that took very clear inspiration from Nier, and it wanted to be Nier so badly. But unfortunately, it was a very low-budget indie game, and it was very, very, very unfortunately put together. So, it was a game where basically every mechanic just didn't work properly. Its basic combat was a nightmare. Almost all of its boss fights were just miserable. And almost everything about playing the game was just a nightmare. And It started off being borderline passable, and it sounded like it might be like at first it seemed like it might be one of those endearing indie games that like has a lot of rough edges, but its heart shines through, and like, oh, we're gonna like this game in spite of stuff, like say Zenith, which is a game that I had so many problems with, but ultimately was like really happy I played because there's really cool stuff going on in that game despite the massive problems that game has. Animagative Memories was a game where it just got worse. Every level got worse than the last one, and the mechanics only continually got worse, and it was just a miserable, horrible experience. And it's hard to even recreate the list of grievances I had with that game without just going back and replaying the game and just watching the entire series again because of just the sheer number of issues that were there to be had. And of course, on Sad Games, it was what we call it when I played games with Andrew, because my original channel was Sad Games with Andrew, and then I started doing my solo channel. Then I started focusing on my solo channel, and then I gave him that channel for himself, basically. When we play games on that channel, we don't always play games that are bad on purpose, but we definitely play games like Sonic the Hedgehog specifically because they're generally bad, the 3D ones. And across the board, no matter how bad it gets, every Sonic game, every game like Anima or Mass Effect Andromeda, or the many other problematic games I've played over the years, no matter how bad it gets and no matter how blatantly problematic stuff can be, there will always be an army of people there to defend the series, and they will continue to watch. And they will go and they'll watch your 60-part playthrough while arguing with every point you've made across the entire thing. It's an interesting thing to watch. It's much like the people who will talk about you being a terrible Let's Player or a terrible player of the game and just yell at you and cringe at you, and then will never stop watching, and they'll stick at it forever. I'm like, I don't understand this contradiction that's happening. If you don't like it, you can just stop. For me, I keep playing in these situations for two reasons. One, I like to finish things I start, just in general. I think it kind of sucks to have it kind of sucks to not finish a playthrough, just in general, because you started it and then people will get invested in it, and like you, potentially hundreds of hours of human hours are spent watching your series, and then you just cancel it, and then it just ends. I'm like, that sucks. I don't like it when a television show I like gets canceled, and I don't like it when a series I watch gets canceled. And I've watched plenty of other, like, I'll poke around at other people's playthroughs from time to time. I'll look at like Wanderbot, and I'll look at Splattercat and stuff like that, and even like larger channels, like even stuff like Rooster Teeth and so on and so forth. And I'll look at whenever they start a series and then they quit it, I'll look at their last episode and I'll check out all of those comments that are there, all the people that are let down by the process. And that's a good motivator to not cancel playthroughs, because you're letting down all of those people. And generally, continuing a series shouldn't be harmful. Because like one of the contradictions I always see is people like, if you don't like it, why don't you stop playing it, is usually what people say. But then like that same logic defeats their argument to an extent, because like if they don't like the series, then they should stop watching it. Because ideally the people who like a series would be the only people who keep watching it. That's the logical thing to do. And so when people keep watching a series they don't like, I'm like, why don't you stop watching it? And then I can keep making it for the people who want it to continue, and you can stop watching it since you're the person who doesn't want it to continue. It just seems like the most logical thing in the world. And so that's what I stick to generally. It's like I'll make my idea, like if I'm doing my criticism heavy series or something of a game that I don't like, I'll still stick it out for the people who want to do that. And frankly, I like doing the criticism thing. The convenient thing for me, and this is the other reason, because I pointed the idea of two reasons before. There's the reason where I don't want to cancel something somebody had started, and there's also the reason which is that I kind of like it. Ever since I did stuff with Sad Games, playing crappy games with Andrew, or doing spoiler casts where we discuss a movie that we don't like and stuff like that, like doing a thing where I do where I air my grievances and stuff like that is enjoyable enough in its own right. It's not. It becomes a thing where I'm not enjoying the game, but I'm enjoying another thing that involves the game. That's like a meta enjoyment of the game in a weird way. So, surprisingly, yeah, like I kind of enjoy playing shitty games at times. Like, I like that Anima Gate of Memories is a thing that happened in my life, in a way, because it's kind of fun to point back at that nightmare game that I played that one time, and it'll like get this and like as somebody who runs a channel with an audience, like it ends up being this thing that gets to have like a reputation, like of the thing I refer to. Like, there's the geologist part where we mention columnar jointing. There's the parts where here and now and then I'll say like something in German, and then there's something like Gate of Memories or Slippery Climb, and like little moments in the history of the channel that certain people will remember because of the emotional levels that they may have led me to at time to time. Like, it's all part of the game. It's all part of the thing of running the channel, and it's all part of the personality and whatnot, is to see all of those extremes, and just being... I like exploring negative emotions at times because it's real, and it's part of the range of humanity, and that's kind of what and other people enjoy it because they still watch that stuff, even if other people complain. And so that's why I stick to it, generally. I like exploring the full range of human emotion and stuff like that in that context, because I really hate what I call enthusiast press. I don't think well, I guess not even really that I call it. I think everyone kind of calls it that. I hate it when there's channels that are just all smiles all day, or casts that review things and so on and so forth. I hate, just in general, I'm going the total wrong way right now. I hate the concept of pretending to love everything all the time, because then it means your emotion's useless. You get the, it's like the Nerdist problem, basically, of like, Chris Hardwick, bless his heart, he sure as hell is making a career for himself, but his career is often just all about smiling and being enthusiastic about everything all the time. And there's like you watch the hype stuff, like about like E3 and PAX, like so much of video game culture and media is all about hype, and it feels gross at times, because it feels like people are willingly becoming part of the PR branch of a corporation that they don't even work for, and it's like, no, stuff can suck. In fact, stuff has to suck. The stuff that sucks is why all the stuff that's good is good, and why it matters. We can't caring about really cool things like Dark Souls or Journey and all the really memorable, interesting experiences we have in gaming. Those things are memorable and interesting because of all the crap that surrounds them. And so exploring and criticizing what goes wrong with certain things is part of what's interesting to me, and it's part of the full experience, because otherwise everything's just flat. I get bored with a lot of channels that I watch myself because they aren't candid enough. Because I like to watch, I enjoy just frank commentary and honesty and stuff like that, which is one of the reasons I've managed to stick with stuff like Game Grumps after all these years, because like they have moments where they just break down and just start having and they just are just hanging out and having an honest conversation, as opposed to what a lot of the other channels can be at times, because the fakeness is miserable to me. Not only does it feel like I'm being manipulated because people are guarding real emotions for what feels like ulterior motives, either because they have a deal with the company that they're covering and that they're dishonestly covering their content in order to make it look better, or the other side of things, which is that they're terrified of offending anyone and they want everyone to like them on the entire internet, so they're blanket positive about everything all the time because they don't want to offend any fandom ever, God forbid, because they want to have everyone in their audience and appeal to everyone all the time, which makes them not appeal to me, ironically, because of how mass appeal they are. I hate that stuff. I want frankness. I like the honesty. It's great. It's texture. I want to disagree with the people that I follow at times. It's fine. It's cool. It makes them humans, and that's the best thing. So yeah, to answer the original question, no, I don't ever pretend to like a game for the sake of it. I will always I'll either be honest in the moment about how I feel about the game, or I will turn around and basically, at least when the credits roll, if I have a lingering criticism I haven't voiced it, I'll usually get it out around the credits at the end of the game, just to voice it there. recent one that comes to mind is, I think I talked about Rhyme having potentially pacing issues when I got to the end credits of that game. Hadn't really voiced that up until that point, but I figured I'd get around to it then, because I hadn't really covered it yet. Anyway, this is getting long, and I just finished this particular mission, so I think I'll stop here. Tell me what you think, I guess. This is rambling, and it's been weird. I have a lot of questions left from the Patreon people, so we'll be getting through with those, but that's fine. It means we got a lot of material to go through. This is my halfway Let's Play podcast thing. Whatever. This is my Q&A series. You can give me a question, I'll ramble on about stuff. I'll get around to the second half of Piotr's question next time, I think, because this one's rambled on for long enough. I'll probably always answer questions this way, where I just go on, and I think I've answered every question technically, but I definitely just cover a bunch of related issues too. Thanks for watching like always, guys. Be sure to send in your questions to keithballardquestions@gmail.com. The email should be in the description somewhere, or maybe even listed on the screen if I have the forethought to edit that kind of thing. And feel free to send in your questions. You don't necessarily need to worry about censoring. I guess if you know I won't answer your question because it's straight up inappropriate or something, then you probably should do that little bit of restraint. But if you're like uncertain, you can just go ahead and send it in, and I can choose to ignore whatever questions I want. I'm gonna be recording these. There might be a few of them back to back early on, because I'm looking at the backlog of Patreon questions, and there's a lot of them, so I think I want to burn through these. So there might be relatively frequent videos, but my long-term plan for the series is probably to make it like a series that comes out like once every Friday or something like that, and then I'll be reviewing last week's questions or whatever backlog I have and stuff like that. To be clear, this is not a Patreon-only series. I just specifically, when I was reviving the series, I figured I'll send a message to my Patreon supporters and let them get the first questions in as a little reward. So that was a one-time thing, and hopefully people appreciate that. So I'll still be getting around to questions from Nox, Virgil Gardner, Calliope Ran. These names are not easy. Justin Foxsoul, Daniel Leahy. I'll get around to you guys. You're a whole here in my documents, and I'll get to you next. Thanks for watching like always, guys. Thanks for putting up with my rambling nonsense, and enjoy this series that you probably turn on in the background and then look away from while doing other things. And I'll see you next time.